since no one yet is speaking, I'm actually going to read the discussion that we've had on the side here. Yao said, I'm pretty sure that many of the non-native speakers have experienced prejudice or confidence challenges due to issues of simply having an accent. So I'm very glad to hear Dr. Tom's comment that you need good enough English to communicate. I wonder what are both speakers' perspective on how should SLPs position themselves with being a communication specialist that comes with the knowledge to help, but might not be sounding perfect in English themselves.
I would like to comment on this. I think depends on where you are from. If you come over here like Ken was growing up here, of course he has no problem, okay? For me, come over here when I was already past 20 years old, so definitely you will carry your accent for life. But accent is only one part of the speech component. That's what I have to stress that. Accent can be reduced, but cannot be totally eliminated. It's very, very important. I make that very strongly. Because in the beginning of my career, I searched for 3 years, tried to decrease my accent. I want to be perfect. I just want to be like them, okay? But actually, no matter whatever I'm looking for it, no matter how much I try it, I could not really get rid of my accent. But I can eliminate or reduce. I can reduce my accent to the point I can communicate it very effectively. I think that the way how to communicate effectively, that's the key you have to work on. And those really takes learning. Learning how to increase your enunciation, articulation, learn how to look at the speakers to present yourself, how to organize your thoughts, how to present yourself very well. And I think those kind of techniques can be learned. Accent is just part of one very small component of communication.
I wanted to add to that too. I think that there are so many aspects of a verbal message besides the quote-unquote native-like pronunciation. And Melody's bringing these up. Nonverbals and paraverbals. So organizing your thoughts so that they're more sort of Western and linear rather than kind of circular will help an audience follow you or an individual follow you who's accustomed to that kind of semantic organization. The other, which is, it was hard for me to learn in, say, junior high and high school, which was to look at adults straight in their eye. I grew up not being told not to do that. And so looking at people right in the eye and using that visual connection to their eye and also being able to emphasize with your voice the important words when you speak clarifies the message and lets, I think, accent effects fade into the background. So I think that part of the learning is watching speakers, native speakers, in fact, whom you admire and think speak really clearly and you would like to come off like them. Look at their paraverbals and their nonverbals and try to incorporate them into your own style so that you become bilingual not only in just the language, but in all of the paralanguage that goes on with face-to-face communication. That's all we do in clinic. So that connection is also our relationship binder. It's the wires between us and our client. And so that's important.
And Dr. Henry Liu had also typed a comment earlier regarding this. He says, as long as we can communicate well, having an accent is something to be proud of. It means we can speak at least 2 languages. Most people who are prejudiced can speak only 1 language.
Yeah.
We should work in an environment that embraces diversity and thus accent, as long as we're good communicators. So it seems to be the same message coming from coming from everybody. I also, I'm going to unmute the mic of Yin Chao, who said that she was having trouble doing it on her end. Sorry to put you on the spot, Yin Chao. I'm going to unmute the mic. Can you?
Okay, I just want to thank you that Kenneth and Melody for sharing their story and Candace's advice. Yeah, that's, you give a very, very, very true advice, especially that Kenneth pointing out that, be straight, because in our language or culture, we tend to be circumlocuted. And that takes a long, long time to actually really learn the straight way. Give the message right at the best instead of giving the backgrounds. That probably takes some practice, for people coming from the original countries, no matter what country they came from. That's what, it's happened to me also take a long time for me, because I always want to provide the background first before I really get into the point. Yeah, so that takes some practice. Yeah. Hi, Citra.
Hi.
Did I say Citra?
Okay, is it okay if I mute your mic, Yin Chao, so we have
Sure. Yeah.
less noise? Just in Yin Chao, anytime you just type to me that you would like to speak, and I can help you with that. Hi, Cedric.
Hi. Yeah, I also want to add the thing about the accent is that from what I've experienced so far, because I've had two uncles. My uncles and aunts, they argue with each other a lot when it comes to politics or something personal. So I encountered a situation where my uncles were arguing, and in the middle of it, they were like, "Cedric, I don't understand your uncle. Teach him how to talk. You're studying speech language pathology." Yeah. So which was pretty ironic, because both of them speak quote unquote broken English. So I didn't say anything there, but I think at that point I should have been like, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with his accent. Why don't you guys get at each other for the points that you're making, rather than the way that the style that he's speaking and his accent. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at the content, right? Rather than the dressing.
Yeah, it's funny how they would use what I'm studying as an insult to each other because they got mad at each other.
But I want to comment on that. Since we are professional, okay, we should not use broken English. We should have a certain standard, because we are professionals. And also try to remember, you don't want to corner yourself just by providing services to your own people. You have to provide services to the mainstream Americans. What is mainstream America is not just Asian Pacific Islanders. Okay, so that's correct to me too. That's the reason I want to challenge myself, leave my Chinese community. I don't treat any Asian Pacific Islanders. I want to see whether I can survive in that tough environment. So you have to have a certain standards. And also another way is coming from both of them is the cultural differences. Yeah, you have to really learn how to say things directly, which is not our natural style, because we're also beating around the bushes and try to get the point. But I think in this society, I learned very quickly, in order for you to indicate what you want, you have to say directly. It sounds very impolite to us. How dare you say that? But for this, it's common sense. So you have to make that big gap. Bridges, try to say, well, if I want to rephrase my statement and say directly. I want to make sure my listeners know what I want. That's the key component.
You mentioned it interesting. This is my own question to both of you, which is, you just mentioned something very interesting, Melody. I've heard, for example, people concerned that, okay, I see everybody's encouraging me, I can do this, but only for my own community, right? Yes. That if they are Vietnamese, native language is Vietnamese, then everybody's very encouraging that they get their degree so they can serve that community. But that's actually quite restrictive, right? So
You should not, because I think starting serving your own community gives you the comfort level. That's where I came first. I stay in the hospital, which they want me to build up the program for Chinese community. Actually, I built up the Chinese speech clinic in Los Angeles area because nobody is there. And they sense that there's a need for the Chinese people, but nobody could do it. So they hire me with the hope that to establish the program. So I immediately was put on the spot to do whatever I can. And that's just out of school. But it's very important things. It's very interesting. Now I reflect to what happened to me before, in the past. I welcome those challenges. Maybe at that time I said, gosh, what's a headache? I did not know what to do. But you did not know you had that potential until you are challenged. I think I want to tell everybody that I did not know I had that potential, but I stick to it. I try to problem solving it. I welcome the challenge. Boom. Then you elevate yourself to the different level. That's very, very important. Don't corner yourself, because after I serving in the one community, the hospital, then I say, well, why they always say you are good only serving Chinese population? No, I don't want to corner myself. I want to prove myself I can serve everybody. Chinese is a plus. Nobody can serve better, right? You can speak the language, you are better than them. But how about other things, other people? I still remember my supervisor, my CFY supervisor told me that, I told her, I say, could you give me an honest advice if I want to stay in the United States? Do I have any limitation to serve the people here? She thought about it, and she said, yes, you do. I said, what kind of things? I do have a restriction or limitation. And she said, well, maybe there's an articulation, and then the speech impairment, because you do have some problem in terms of your own speech. Okay, I said, what else? She said, maybe vernic-aphasic, because they have difficulty in interpreting the intonation. Maybe your intonation is very different, so you may have a limitation for that. But look at me, I'm providing to everybody. I don't see any limitations. The only limitation is if you set a limit for yourself. You have to prove that you don't have that limitations. Now you can pick whatever you want to do, whatever you like to do, because the field is so huge.
I did some interesting research on this, on accent and language instruction. There's very little research in our field, but more in teaching English as a second language. And I'll just make this comment short, because actually Yao would like to make a comment or ask a question. And what they found is that the teachers of English as a second language, who are themselves non-native speakers of English, in many ways are more effective because they've had to consciously think about that process, and so they have the resources to explain to another person in a way that somebody who is a native speaker, it's not so visible to them. So that was so interesting to find that it's actually an asset. Also, the other thing is, people always say, well, if you speak with an accent, you're working with my child, they're going to pick up your accent. But we also know that
that's true.
That's not true. So you can look at any family with children where the parents are non-native speakers. The children have the accent of their community, of the mainstream community, never that of their parents. So, we have some good responses, I think, to those particular points. So Yao, I would like to unmute your mic, and yes, are you able to speak?
Yeah, I think I want to comment and just echo both speakers in this sense, because I moved to the States in my teenage years, and then it's way past the critical period, but it's still been hard because people do pick up on you, especially when you do start circumlocute, and not because you're trying to be polite, is you just really don't know how to express it. It happens occasionally, and during clinical settings, it's challenging at the moment. I think also the reason why I raised this question is this is Chinese saying. Now I have to translate like literally. You throw a stone in order to catch a whole bunch of jade. But that's the point. I like to see, because we all have like our personal experience in terms of the linguistic or cultural diversity might bring advantage. Like I was able to get a medical per diem job in the hospital simply because I speak Mandarin and I'm serving the community in Bay Area. On the other hand, while I'm doing home health, going into like a really not pure white, but more middle class American resident, primarily American resident community, because I carry an accent and it's hard on the phone trying to make scheduling. It's a very realistic scheduling problem in clinical world. The client has hearing loss, but somehow this got misinterpreted into my supervisor. I was like, oh, she has an accent, so our client can't understand her. So the nurse was reporting that, and then I was like, this doesn't make sense. The reason why I want you to help me schedule, because I think she doesn't hear me clearly on the phone. So it's a lot things like that happen in our day-to-day life. But I really admire both of you have really great comments. I know that by heart. It's you have to be good and better than them, and then you really solve their problem. You're a strong clinician that demonstrate you are solid clinically to do whatever you're doing. Doesn't matter if you have a darker hair or if you carry a little accent. Another thing I think this really echoes back to our initial discussion in terms of how do we really bring Chinese, Japanese, Korean, or like the Pan-Asian community into awareness to bring more students into this field of speech language pathology, audiology. We have to realize a lot of the people, especially those coming from like say linguistic major, Chinese major, literature major, they want to try things like this, become a clinician, but language communication is the primary barrier that stopped them before even able to pursue this. I have a classmate myself during grad school. She just really experienced lots of hard times during the clinical fellow, because you have to be good on paper and becoming the A student, but you also have to be like solid in your verbal oral cadence. So that's been challenging for them, and I just witnessed that process. So during my last semester in undergraduate, I actually organized like a more online training class. I took all my accent modification materials, and then I just recruited several PhD students from China online. We did like a 7-week online accent modification courses, because I was just like, I'm kind of done with undergrad. I have an offer for my master. I'm bored, but I really want to try something to help and then see how this helps. And I think not only I was able to introduce them that, this speech pathology, this is a profession in the U.S., and we help people with autism, we help people with dementia and stroke. We also help you just become a better communicator. That really brings up a window, and I think there's a lot we can do, and I hope dialogue like this and can happen more often to more and more people that just simply need the information. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. In the interest of time, I know that everyone's taking time out of their Sunday to be here, so I don't want to run too long, but I think maybe it's wonderful that we're ending at a point where maybe we feel like we even want to continue, right? That's my parents' motto anyway, when they have people for dinner, that you want to leave them wanting more to come back. So this is good, and hopefully we will have many opportunities, in fact, to do more It's really wonderful that our first dialogue, I think, was so successful. It's so wonderful to get everyone together and to spend the Sunday afternoon with you. And we will have this recorded and available for other people who weren't able to make it here. And look forward to many other opportunities to work with you and learn from each other. So I'm going to end the meeting, and big applause to everyone, and a big thank you for Kenneth and Melody for speaking to us and sharing their stories today.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Betty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.